Welcome, everyone. It's good to be back on this screen with these folks. Although I see many of you who I was with, or at least say names for several people, and a few other people I'll be with soon here in Hawaii. And sorry I had to leave for just a moment. I had the windows open to get nice fresh air, but now all the local dogs decided to start barking. So it became very noisy. So let's begin our sitting. to sit together in this way appears so ordinary. It's nothing special. And it isn't, from a conventional way of speaking. And yet it's quite profound. In our world, in which we're offered so many opportunities to engage in complex endeavors which promise us some remarkable and new result in our lives. It's not very exciting to sit down in the midst of our lives and open to what's there. With each breath and each moment of sitting upright and bringing our attention to our breath and our posture, we're saying yes to our life. Of stopping our relentless busyness and being willing to live each moment in such a simple way. It seems like it's nothing special, but maybe it's the most important thing we could possibly do to support the life that we're actually living and the lives of those around us who require our living, our life, our practice to continue. no matter what you're doing at each moment of your life or not doing, this zazen is the backdrop of each of those moments. This simple, embodied breathing presence out of which everything else comes and to which everything else will return. This is our life. And there are many wonderful things we do in the world which are creative and beautiful and helpful. Without our understanding of this backdrop of our life, it's easy to get lost. So with the understanding of this boundless background, this field of benefaction in which we live and remember, then we chant our verse of the robe. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. So great. It's been several weeks since I've been in this format. As I said, it's so great to see everyone. It's nice to look around. As some of you know, I've been involved in two retreats during this time when I was not at Inquiry. One being the residential retreat here on Molokai. And I see some of our folks, as I said, online now. And then I was privileged to be part of the residential retreat at a distance that was being held in Sheldon in the south of England, in Devon, with our teachers, Josh and Trudy, leading, and many of the other senior students who are here participating. It's been a full few weeks. And today, as a prompt for our inquiry for us to reflect on, I want to talk about a story and a koan, really. But the background, some of you know this who have been in the residential retreats here in Hawaii. One of the things that I did last year, and then again this first retreat this time, is we were studying Zen mind, beginner's mind, and also what it means to be part of this lineage. And so I asked each person in the retreat to report on a person from our lineage. Women would report on women teachers in the lineage, and men would report on men teachers. And I assigned them particular ones that I thought would be um, inspiring for them, or encouraging, or that they would find friendship with. So that's the background of what I'm about to say. And in the retreat, um, we happen to have a mother and daughter, and Norma Akamatsu and her daughter Sarah are both here today, I think. See them. And it was interesting. And Norma, I met at the Cape Cod Institute last year in the summer, and I'd not met Sarah before. And if I hope I'm not saying anything inappropriate here, Sarah, but I think Sarah hasn't had, she's in the mental health field, but hadn't had a lot of experience in retreat. So she jumped in the deep end, right with her mom. But hey, you're not going to turn down a trip to Hawaii, right? So she she came along, and of course, it was brilliant to have her here. Um, Interestingly, I assigned Norma the great Zen ancestor Mugai Nyodai, who's the first female Chan master, the first Zen abbess of monastery. She lived from 1223 to 1298. So she overlapped Dogen and Keizan, two of the male teachers who were seen as the foundations of the Soto lineage. And she's really famous for the story of the moon in the bucket. Some of you know that old story about carrying the bucket and it falling apart and her looking at the moon, and everything falls away and ordinary life reveals the boundlessness of life. Some of what I was speaking about when we were sitting. So it was, I think maybe it was true that Norma might have been our most senior person in the group, uh, simply by age, but also certainly she had immense experience. So I thought this was a great one for her to report on. And then I thought, for Sarah, the daughter, I'm going to have her talk about Lingzhao. Now, Lingzhao was the daughter of, in the Pang family of layman Pang fame. They were lay people. They never were in the monastery. Um, and the stories are about the father and the mother and this daughter, Lingzhao. And I love this, and their unnamed son. The boy wasn't really focused on very much. Um, but this family was like the embodiment of enlightened householder Zen or life in China at that time. And this is way earlier. This is another 6 centuries before um, um, Mugai. And they were a very interesting family. They were in the 8th century. But this is our way, isn't it? All of us. Most of us don't live in monasteries or temples, and we're in a family or on our own practicing in the world with each other. So the Pang family is very revered because they're similar to us. And they were also full of humor, and they were really eccentric. I won't say like a lot of you, but I could, like a lot of us, we're funny and eccentric. Um, and the dad, Layman Pang, was a student of the great Zen master Ma or Matsu, who many of our koans come from, and the kind of the golden age of Zen in that century. And, I think we're all like them, strange and wonderful in our own ways, and have the potential for expression of freedom in the everyday world. I mean, this is what we're about. That's why we practice together. But I want to also situate this because I want to come back to the story. The reason I'm talking about this is I couldn't get Ling Xiao and Sarah out of my mind after we left. Uh, Sarah didn't have much experience also with forms, or she's not done it much, but I noticed the first day, suddenly I hadn't assigned anyone to hand out the chant cards for the meal chant. And I said, Sarah, and I gave them to her really quick. And I said, so would you just, when everyone circles for, would you just make sure everyone has these and they'll bow to you and you just give them the chant card? So suddenly from not doing anything several times a day, she's offering something and being bowed to every single person. and she inhabited it with great joy. And this is what Lingzhao was like. She was, uh, in fact, her name, Lingzhao, means spirit shining. And Sarah was just like that, you know. But I also want to say something just historically, because some of you like this kind of stuff. I certainly do. During the time that the Fang family was alive in this sort of golden age of Zen in China, the idea of what awakening was or how it happened was changing. It was a revolution. Zen was a revolution in Buddhist thought. Chan was, due to the work of many of these masters that we're talking about. Awakening was coming to be seen as something that happened in relationship. Now, for all of you, you've heard that from the beginning with the teachings that we've offered through Appamada. But this was where it came from. It wasn't like the individual striving for enlightenment of the Indian culture from which it came. It wasn't individual. It wasn't a deeply introverted event, but something that happens in the spaces between people or between a person and nature. It opened it up. This was the liberating intimacy that was also a seed that formed the kind of foundational understanding at the heart of the Appamada way that Peg and I have developed. And that was what was happening at this particular time. And the Pang family also made really, really clear something that today we might take for granted if you look at the screen, but in that day was not clear at all. Number one, that awakening is as likely and as profound for people who live at home, didn't have to go to a monastery or temple. And number two, and it included women. This family showed both of those things. Everyone's included. You don't have to go to a monastery to do it. In fact, like I said, we don't know much about the son, really. What we hear is that he tended the garden and made food, nourished the family. We also know a little bit that Lingzhao and her father were inseparable, that they were extremely close. And they made utensils and baskets out of bamboo, and they sold them in the marketplace. That was their job. So I thought this was great because Ling Zhao was the daughter of this family, and here I had Sarah reporting on this to a mother who was just reporting on someone whose basket had broken. And so that's just my crazy way of thinking about things. So this is what they do. And Ling Zhao also accompanied her dad when they'd go on pilgrimages. They were really close. And just a side note, I didn't know until later, once I got to know Norma and Sarah better, that Sarah's father, Norma's husband, had died um, years before, not recently, and that so it was another little piece that touched the heart of the story. So here's a story. Here's an example. Some of you have heard this story, and it'll give you a sense of both the beauty and the profundity of Lingzhao and the family, but also their quirkiness. Here's how it goes. One day, Lam and Pang and his daughter Lingzhao were out selling bamboo baskets. And coming down off of a bridge, the dad stumbled and fell down. When Lingzhao saw this, she ran over to her father's and threw herself down on the ground. And her father said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, I saw you fall, so I'm helping." And he says, "Lucky no one was looking." That's the end of the story. So, like, what? So I'm going to give some credit here, beautiful credit to Joan Sutherland. Many of you know, is a wonderful teacher and writer. And in one of the talks she gave about this story, I'm going to quote her here. She says, Ling Zhao's action, this throwing herself down, Ling Zhao's action obliterates the idea that there's a helper and someone who's helped. Compassion isn't a commodity we deliver, but a commitment, as Chan puts it, to help listen to this, to help liberate the intimacy already inherent in any situation. Our work is a commitment to help liberate the intimacy already inherent in any situation. So, what we do in our practice, to the extent that we can, is to liberate the intimacy already inherent in any situation. When I said, as we were sitting, there's a background of your life behind all the stuff you're doing. This is what we invite an inquiry. In fact, in Chinese, in the language and the way it was used at this time, to become intimate is a synonym for becoming enlightened. We're not talking about human sentiment and emotion. We're talking about intimacy. We're talking about meeting things just as they are, being intimate with each moment. It's like Dogen's, intimacy with all things. So in Chinese, in the language, intimacy and enlightenment were synonymous. They're used interchangeably in the literature. So the idea is not that, how would I say, this intimacy is something we manufacture and deliver, like Sutherland was saying about compassion, because we don't make intimacy, but something that's already there, something already inherent everywhere in everything. And our job is to find it and bring it out, to liberate it. There's a side note here. Those of us, so many of you use internal family systems language a lot. And I hear the translations, oh, there's self energy at the core of every part. Can you find the freedom in every piece of us, every aspect of us, and liberate it? That's the Bodhisattva's job in our own self structure, the enactment of the generosity, of mutual causality. Everything is expressing everything all the time and depends on everything else. That's the ultimate liberation and ultimate intimacy. So that's a little bit conceptual, but it's important to understand this strange thing that Lingzhao is doing. It's like, what is she doing? Because usually the most intimate response to another's difficulty, if somebody around us is having a tough time, the most intimate thing we can do is not run off, to not turn away, to not flee when somebody's having a tough time. Like she did, she went right to him. Now, to abandon a situation or to turn away might be literally um, to just go away, to turn away from what's happening. But it can also, and I know a lot of you are familiar with this, you can flee from a situation by escaping into helping. And suddenly you become that self who's the helper and actually not meet what's going on. And you can also get lost in all your constellation of ideas about what ought to happen. You get busy thinking about what ought to happen. There's no responsiveness. Because, helping is so full of agendas and presuppositions and ideas about stuff. Excuse me. So I would say maybe intimacy is being willing to stay and to accompany and to listen, to be vulnerable yourself and to be surprised and to be flexible. It's a willingness to fall with someone else and see what becomes possible when we do it. Did you see the analogy of what she's doing? She's falling down. How does that help? Well, unless you go with someone and meet them, you don't know what's possible. You don't know what's possible. This is improvisational virtuosity, as we call it, an unconventional level of attunement, of meeting someone, making contact with them and following them. And then that funny remark where, the dad says, well, lucky no one was looking. I don't think he was saying, I'm glad no one saw my crazy daughter throwing herself down on the ground when I fell down. I think it's more, he's pointing to what life is like when we relate to each other, like Lingzhao did, without self-consciousness, which is another way of saying intimately. He's not worried about what other people are going to think about the situation. They did all kind of nutty things, you know. What he's saying is the one who fortunately isn't looking is this one, ourselves, all of our self-judgments. Luckily, she didn't stop herself. Luckily, no one was inhibiting her. This inner tendency, you know, to monitor and pass judgment and distancing ourselves from what's actually happening. Have you ever noticed how free you feel when you're not keeping score? How generous your life is when you're living it like no one's evaluating it? And this is, I think, what Ling Xiao is teaching us and what the dad is underscoring when he says, thank God no one's looking. And when she threw herself down, it doesn't seem like at an ordinary level, but this is her kindness that's clear and unhesitating, completely without self-concern. And it's also hilarious. It's like, what? But these were qualities of her enlightenment. This is who she was. And that's what I was appreciating about Sarah. She didn't come in with a lot of ideas. I mean, she might have some, but she didn't have a lot of, experience. She just was offering herself so brightly. And those qualities of Ling Xiao's enlightenment that you see with her dad here is what it looks like when all the energy that we usually bind up in our small story, I guess I would call it, the small stories we're constantly telling ourselves about ourselves, when that stuff is all freed up, all the picking and choosing goes away, trying to protect ourselves, and all our reactions and judgments and opinions, all that has been freed up into the space of awakening. And the qualities of my awakening will look different than the qualities of yours. And you see it in each person as they come forward in inquiry. And we're all manifest in response to relinquishing whatever our stories are and our self-concerns and our picking and choosing. And you see what flows naturally when that happens. So here are these people, this family, long time ago, 1,000 years ago more. And here's another one. And this is funny because when I was reading this talk I mentioned Joan Sutherland had given, she says, this is Tuesday morning at the Pang household. It's like, Tuesday morning? How did she know? So here's the other story I wanted to tell, which is a lovely one. And there are many versions of it I found. Here's one version. So one day, the layman was meditating in his hut. He had this little hut in the back where he would sit. And he suddenly cried out. And, he says it loud enough so that his wife and his daughter could hear it in the house. He cries out, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. I put 10 coats of linseed oil on this platform too, like where he was sitting. So he's sitting and he's saying, oh man, this is hard to get up off the cushion, to stand on the floor and do all this. But Miss Pang, she's, cries back to him, it's easy. It's easy. Just turn your eyes to the floor, lower your feet to it, and be on your way. Like, just stand up, dude. Doesn't have to be hard. But then Ling Zhao says, it's neither hard nor easy. The heart mind of the ancestors is in every blade of grass. Now, I'll get back to that, but here's another version. I think this is the version that Sarah told, which my favorite. So the layman is reflecting on practice like we are. And he says, so difficult, so hard. It's like trying to store sesame seeds at the top of a tree. It's like if you try to store these tiny little seeds in the top of a tree, it doesn't hold. You ever feel that about your practice? It's so hard. It's like, I can't hold it. And his wife says, no, it's easy. It's just like putting your feet on the floor when you get out of bed. It's right there. It'll hold you. And the daughter says, Lingzhao, she says, neither difficult nor easy. Zen is not difficult and it's not easy. You'll find the great teachings in the glistening dew balanced on the tip of every blade of grass. In other words, you get all caught up in whether it's hard or whether it's easy and all your preferences and all the stuff we were just talking about, sitting down, standing up, none of that. Ling Zhao is cutting through both her parents and saying, it's that in every blade of grass and every breath you take, every single choice you make in your life, the heart mind of the ancestors are right there. If it's hard, the heart mind of the ancestors are in that difficulty. If it's easy, the heart mind of the ancestors are right there in that joy. No problem appearing anywhere. In other words, on every single thing, there is a potential for awakening to be liberated. When Dongshan said, just this is it, that's what he was talking about. When Dogen says, we're never separated from one, right where one is, that's what he's talking about. I mean, I'm referring to quotes you may not be know, but so anyway, she's saying, yeah, you can get caught in your self-centered dream and hold the self-centered thoughts and think it's easy or it's hard, or you can let go and realize that the teachings are available to you all the time in every little dewdrop on every tip of grass. In other words, in each tiny, beautiful moment. So they're unusual. And when they speak to us, if they do after such a long time, um, they can be kind of vivid and palpable in these when you tell the stories. And the reason I think is because they're like our friends and our neighbors, like each other. When we practice together, whether it's in a residential intensive like we just had here and also in England, um, with the Pang family or the Akamatsu family, or online like today with people from all over the world, we are learning and awakening with our friends and neighbors. We recognize each other. That's what these people are doing. They're not exalted, I know, Zen masters in somewhere, but they also, even though they're householders, they represent something bigger because I think they represent what we aspire to and something we recognize in ourselves. Uh, I heard a teacher say that bodhisattvas live at the gate that stands between ordinary lives and the life we aspire to. Do you ever find yourself like that? You live at this gateway, this between the life you're living and the one you aspire to. And this life that you aspire to sometimes shows up in your actual life. And our lives go into that place. And the commitment of a bodhisattva is to be at that gate all the time. Because part of the aspiration of the bodhisattva vow is to be able to live at the gate, to feel the mixing of the ordinary moments of our life with the expansive, spacious moments. And they were always there, but sometimes slips out of our awareness. You know, this is one of the reasons that it's important to come forward in inquiry and meet your practice edges with vulnerability and with vitality, because we inspire each other and we help each other aspire to something more. We recognize each other in the mirror. And Zazen is what keeps us at that gate between our ordinary life and the one we aspire to. And this allows us to kind of dream ourselves into the future, but also it keeps the lineage going because our practice is what keeps the lineage going. We live these precious human lives, and they're precious not because, I don't know, all life is precious, but as humans, we get to make choices. We get to shape our lives. And the bodhisattvas are in these everyday families like the Pang family, help us remember we can do that in our everyday lives. Because if we keep the bodhisattvas too much as these sort of godlike images in the sky, they can become devotional. Um, And so they become like religious figures instead of aspirational figures. We want to make sure they stay aspirational. Re Devotion's fine, and religion is fine, but if it's not, it doesn't um, inspire us to find our inmost request, to follow our way-seeking mind, then it's sort of lost on us, you know. One last quotation. I know I've talked a long time. In terms of our Sangha practice, this comes from Joan Sutherland. But think of it in terms of how we live together now. She says, we have a shared Bodhisattva landscape. We're part of that. We have a shared Bodhisattva landscape with all these people through history. And we're standing in that landscape with everyone who's ever chosen to orient their life in this particular way. Then, knowing that, realizing that, sitting in that, we get to explore and discover the particular way each of us is standing there, dancing there, weeping and singing and walking there. Each of the way our Bodhisattva life manifests. And this is some of what the Pang family is good at reminding us. And that's what Norma and Sarah helped inspired in me. So you can tell I had a lot of energy because they were very encouraging, including other people I see here. There's Leslie and CJ and, a lot of people that were with us. So if this inspired something in you to bring you to that gate of the edge of something, that I'd love to hear it. I see Brahman right away. She, this is all going on at your house.
Um, Along that line, and I'm asking you a question about self-compassion.
Yes.
And the story is there was a volunteer, and we were sitting in circle, and she'd been with us a long time over the years, and she was crying, saying, "It's just not how it used to be. It's just not how it used to be." And then stating all the things that weren't how it used to be. And there are not enough flowers on the table. And so instead of being compassionate about her pain, which I was slightly, it was like, well, put flowers on the buffet. You can do that. You could do that. And it reminded me a little bit of an analogy of, and I'm making this up, of a pretend neighbor who has been furious at me and finally comes and yells at me. And this is pretend. "You killed my dog. You killed my dog yesterday. You ran over it." And I go, "But I was in Europe yesterday. I wasn't even here." Instead of meeting the pain, it's so easy to jump to fixing it because of the seeming absurdity of the pain. You understand? Could you address that a little bit?
Well, you're doing a pretty good job of, because you know what the distinction is. And the practice invitation is to meet the pain,
Right,
go with the person into the thing that we don't want to go. That's why I was talking about the tendency to flee.
right.
You miss the opportunity because when you go in without an agenda about how to fix, you don't know what's going to happen. And that's very uncomfortable. People don't like that.
Yeah.
But once you go in without the agenda and actually meet the pain, then anything is possible. Then you can find what wants to be liberated from that situation. You
Right.
don't know that going in. But if you go in with a solution, you know going in what's going to happen.
And,
And it
and
limits.
how do you, mine is, yeah, I see all that. I see what I could have done, but then the self-compassion from not doing it.
Well, there's the next thing. That's the next thing. And you remember Layman Pang was saying, glad nobody was watching, but he meant like yourself. But this is a
Yeah.
time to bring the Bodhisattva out and meet your pain of feeling like you've been a failure. I think I spoke a couple of weeks ago about wholesome regret.
Yes.
self-compassion. It's like, oh, I could have done that differently. That's actually helpful. Not to feel terrible about yourself or say, I always do that. See, that's what's wrong. And make a story. That's a new small story. Instead, just say, that I can feel the pain about that. So I must have been off somewhere. And to use that as each moment life as it is the only teacher instead of each moment life it is proving what a terrible person I am.
Yeah, and it's not even so much proving what a terrible person. It's the desire to fix it by running out and apologizing. You see what I mean?
Sometimes we just have to slow down
Yeah.
and maybe not do anything for a bit to see what wants to happen. But that doesn't mean stop and withdraw. It means stop and pay attention to see what wants to happen, what's actually needed. Not quite sure. There was a phrase that we used in the retreat in Madison, Wisconsin. The previous retreat, I actually wrote it up on a sheet on the wall. When the Buddha asked, someone asked the Buddha what to do about difficult emotions, he said, gaze upon it with kindness and remain still. He's talking about slow down with self-compassion and see what's needed. So often people will think I'm strange because they'll bring up a situation like you did about it's not the same. And I'll say, I know, that's right, it isn't. And they're like, wait, I was set up to push. It's like, no, you're right. And so what will we do? Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's Norma herself.
Well, I would like to say, newly returned from Molokai, Flint said we were building a monastery together. And just to see Leslie and CJ and Bronwyn practically brings tears to my eyes because of the way that the kind of intimacy you were just talking about was manifest.
Mm.
And, you know, I, I want to acknowledge you without over acknowledging you. I mean, because you said we're all doing this together. So I thank you for that. And I just wanted to say it was nice to hear about the paying father. That my husband Sarah's dad died 25 years ago, but he was the one who dragged me all around as spiritual teachers. I'm kicking and screaming and going on. But he did that, and he kind of sparked my interest.
So
Um,
he's here in all of this.
yes, yes, and when he was diagnosed with an incurable cancer, one day he was fine, and the next day they said, maybe you have 3 years. And he defined this disease as another spiritual training.
Mhm.
And I thought, I am the Sherpa. I'm bringing up supplies from base camp, and someday he'll summit alone. And so he did.
Yes.
But I think the closeness between father and daughter, I appreciated that being brought out in the Pang family because I certainly felt it in ours.
Yes. I didn't, I hoped it was okay to speak about that, but it just seemed like it was very important. And thank you both for such inspiration and your full participation, because you two were one of the few people who had not been in a long retreat with me before, and certainly not in Hawaii. And so you had a lot of faith or confidence to come and take a risk. And I know that some of your other Dharma friends helped you. Uh, like Chris and some other people encouraged you for that. So we appreciate that too. Thank you so much, Nora. I will say that, we have these lineage charts of the Zen ancestors and things. And Norma brought a video and said, look at this. And she had a lineage chart that her brother has, a scroll, all, in the kanji and, And it went on and on. Was it like 12 feet long, I think you said? It was huge. It was her lineage, which took her back actually to these ancestors. And what was the thing, if you don't mind my asking you, Norma, you're an insight, you said, oh, I have shared DNA with these people. Was that it?
Yeah, it was like, whoa, shared DNA with somebody who was alive when Mugen Yodai was walking around.
That this woman that you're on, you're part of the family, you know. One of the things that was quite beautiful is at the last service on the last day, and we're in the yurt, so it's round, and the altar's in the middle, and we're chanting the names of the ancestors. And so I said, okay, on this last day, when your ancestor is chanted, when that name is chanted, as we're just going through, step forward toward the altar. And so as we're chanting, people were individually stepping in. And so by the end, everyone had stepped into the lineage. Everyone had stepped closer with their own body into the lineage. It was probably, to me, one of the most beautiful enactments of that connection as we were chanting all of the male ancestors, all the female ancestors every day. It takes a long time.
Oh, we have Sunny.
Penny,
Unmute myself. Hey,
there you are.
how are y'all? Um, I'm hearing all the people talk about Molokai and just delighted that they had that experience and that you did too. It's so precious time, such precious time. Um, so I was thinking, my question's in formation, so I was going to speak to some of the pieces because literally when you said the word improvisational, that is the word I was holding in my mind. And I was thinking about like when she threw herself on the ground, the joy that I felt when you described that, like I laughed so hard that for too long over here, um, because I've had this great fortune of working with improvisational facilitators, and I think it's uncommon for people to understand how gorgeous that can be, meaning that all that energy is freed up and the sudden flow is there and all those things. And when you were talking about the virtuos,
Intimate. It's
absolutely.
nothingly intimate.
And something magical occurs. And even like, and so anyway, I could go on a little soapbox about how wonderful improv is, but the virtuosity piece is what also is I'm present to. And how that even works really, because I'm pretty skillful at going with, you know? And so it's interesting when you're in application in real life, like in these conditions that I'm experiencing improvisational, people know what we're up to. If you're facilitating, that you're inviting the group in, but in real life, there's places you go where it's not wholesome to say yes and, or, just to use the classic parlance. And so just discerning that is endless.
Yeah,
And so I guess I wanted,
practice, practice, practice,
yeah,
practice.
I know. That's why I wanted you to reflect on the virtuosity piece, if something comes to mind for you around that practice.
Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Sonny, you put yourself in situations, you find yourself in situations where you're challenged because it's outside of the normal range in which and then it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you have to let go of even more ideas and let go of even more and see what's possible here. And sometimes the answer is not very much.
Yeah.
So how would that
Indeed.
not harden and now make a new self out of that?
Mm-hmm.
Not
Mm-hmm.
because you make a change, but because how are you going to, no matter how many times you try to go through that boulder on the stream with your canoe, it's not going to go through the boulder. You're going to have to find some other way.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always turn
Yeah.
out beautifully, like Norma was talking about, or like you're expecting when you
Mm-hmm.
soon. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it goes. You never know. You never know.
That's the thing that I think is also intriguing is that you don't even know. So like how when we can make this commitment to Bodhisattva work and practice and vow, it's actually even the feedback, you don't even get that necessarily. So you don't even know, you can't even evaluate your own skillfulness on some level other than that immediate maybe response and the softening in the exchange. So it's just like an endless question mark.
It is. That's
And
like. And you
mhm,
know that in your world, I mean, welcome to my world. So I never know what's going to
I
happen.
know,
And so
I
I
know.
test. And so I practice and practice and practice. And I was thinking today, how long have I practiced this? Even just inquiry. It's been almost 20 years.
Wow.
So it's the old, 10,000 hour thing, whatever it is. But
Yeah.
you can practice things and that are not wholesome or unskillful. And so that's why
Hmm.
it's there's other people helping you.
Hmm.
This is a
Yeah.
conversation continue forever and will continue, but we have to stop now.
Hmm. Hmm.
Their
Was
time.
that a signal?
Yep. I'm being we're gonna have to we're gonna have to wrap it up now. Love you. Okay,
Love you
you're
too.
ready?
Yeah.
Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way.
Unmute myself. Yeah, I've unmuted myself. Thank you, Flint. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. Lovely to be back with you all after being in Sheldon for a week. It's just nice, really nice to see all your faces. And if you'd like to offer dana to Flint or to Appamada, if you go to appamada.org, you'll find a place there to contribute, and you can either offer dana to Flint, or you can, if you want to offer it to Appamada generally and you want to put it in someone's name or for a class, you can just write that in the box, and so we know what your dedication, your dana is for, if you'd like to make it more personal. But thank you all so much for being here. And if you'd like to join me for a further 30 minutes, pop yourself into gallery view and I'll be with you in just a moment. But thank you all so much. Thank you.